Thank you so much for tuning into my show. William Wallace from America. With me today is an interview that I think is going to be not only enlightening with things that are going on now with the AI data centers, but extremely informative. I know those words are parallel, but I think with this information you're going to get in this interview, you are going to feel the effects of both. Hopefully not the effects of the AI data centers. I do want to point out that I don't think that we're against AI data centers in general overall, but I think when you hear how things are going, it might make you more aware. So let's see if we can put a positive, or try to work on some positive solutions later with that. But with me today is Mike Dillon, aka Maha Mike. Thank you so much for doing the show. Might I add that our show is brought to you today by Patriot Mobile. So when people switch their cell phone service to Patriot Mobile, they use patriotmobile.com/WWFA for discounts. Maha Mike, I know it's a long introduction, but I felt like we had to kind of get the audience warmed up and ready. How was that?
It was good, man. I love it. Let's dive into it, man. These data centers, man, they're popping up everywhere. 12,000 globally, over 5,000 here in the United States. And anybody in your audience, I want to remind people. We always talked about it. I remember even back in when Apple first started coming out and talking about the cloud, like and I'm the first one that was guilty. I'll raise my hand. It was me. Like I envisioned me sending something up and it's just going into the cloud. Like there's some little space bubble, beautiful satellite in the shape of a beautiful white fluffy cloud, and that's where the information is going.
Your
But
own personal little space, right?
yeah, it's my own little bubble, man. But the biggest industrial boom in modern history is happening right now, right in front of us, right before our eyes. And your audience and my audience, most of the people that I've interviewed, they believe that this is just the internet. But the cloud is not floating in the sky. The cloud is factories. It's concrete bunkers, steel campuses, high voltage substation, millions and millions of gallons of water, thousands of diesel engines, backup generators, cooling towers, chemical treatment systems, constant electrical hums, but more importantly, heat exhaust and security lighting that is visible from space. That's what we're dealing with.
And this is something that I think it's interesting you bring it up is light pollution. And I think that mankind has forgotten the beauty of darkness. And what I mean by that, of course, is natural light opposed to, lights. And we need, of course, we need lights on the interstate and our roads and our bridges and all that. I get it. But when you start talking about nature way out in the woods where darkness was a beautiful thing, you're just now saying that we've got light so bright you could see it in space. Do you have more information on that?
Yeah, because what's happening is we're destroying the circadian rhythm. We're relocating crickets. We're relocating the way that turtles are finding their way back out to the moon, and we're not even able to go out and enjoy the stars anymore. And a lot of these cities where you used to be able to go out and you could be able to point out the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, Orion's Belt. You were looking at all these cool things. Now we're seeing less and less, and like you just said, we're building data centers out in Utah, Arizona, places that are like water drought and water scarce. And yet we're putting bloodthirsty, water sucking vampires inside. And I think what we're seeing unfold right before our eyes is we're building digital oil refineries in our backyards, all for artificial intelligence.
When I started our interview, I talked about how people, the people who are afraid of data centers, and I didn't want to make that, and I really don't want to make data centers the evil villain. I mean, I want us to point at the bad, but I'm not trying to protect them either. But then I also know that in this new industrial boom, if used for good, if used for the right thing, from what I'm hearing, it could also be a great tool for mankind. It could be the next industrial revolution, like the industrial revolution with the late 1800s, when we saw machinery that man would use to be able to prosper and be able to grow on this earth and build great things. And we saw it as a great tool for mankind. Out of the Industrial Revolution, we saw pollution and air pollution and water pollution and our rivers polluted. And then, of course, the birth of the EPA comes about and brings everything back into check. and maybe now industry got to a point where it was respectful of the earth. Now I'm kind of being a little long-winded here, but follow me on this. So again, I don't want to call them out, but I also want to point out the bad. So maybe if people are more aware, and this is a question, do you think that if people are more aware that we can find a symbiotic relationship with data centers where maybe we can look for positive solutions to bring about the use of them while maintaining a healthy nature? I'll let you take it from there.
I look at it. I look at it like this. Okay, we all saw what happened when Walmart started expanding across the country, and Walmart moved into the small towns. You know, people were worried. You know, yeah, I'm still going to come get my arts and crafts from you, Betty. You've been here for 20 years. And then the reality is, when Walmart moved in, it was cheaper, it was better. People love that little bouncing yellow face, and I want to go save money. I want to get more and spend less.
Right.
And I think that the bigger issue we have with the data centers is, like you said, the data centers and AI could be really good. It could be great for humanity if it's used for the right reasons and the right purposes. But what we need is, we need a veil lifted from these NDAs, and we need to be told we're not going to spend trillions of dollars in taxpayers' money. We're not going to put stress on water systems. We're not going to put stress on the electrical grid and pass all of these charges on, because if you believe that these data centers are going to go in and they're not going to have contracts with the electrical grid to get a better rate than you're getting, well, that buck has to get passed along somewhere. And I think the bigger concern that we have is, are we dumping in trillions of dollars, and then a short 2 years from now, we're going to have a change at the helm, whether it's at a state level, whether it's at the governor's office, or whether it's a new president with a new, party backing them. And then they're going to go in and say, you know what? We let these data centers come in, and we didn't put enough regulations on them. So now we're going to pause everything, because we need to make sure that they're not tapping into the water supplies where they're not. We need to be able to test all of the chemical runoffs. I think that when we build these systems and build these data centers, they should be built right from the ground up, not go back and have to redo everything, because you and I both know computers change every 15 seconds.
Right.
So we want to know, are we doing what we can to protect the customers? Are we looking at the wastewater? Are we looking at the aquifers? Are we looking at areas that are drought prone? Like, is it because that we can't afford to put these things right next to the ocean and use a desalination plant? Is that too expensive? Can we pump water from somewhere that's bigger? You look at Fayetteville, Georgia. Go ask anybody that lives outside of Meta's new data center and ask them the color of the water and the water pressure that's happening inside of their home. These are the questions that we need to be able to answer before we scale to 5,000 more data centers, because I agree with you. The data centers can be good. It can be used. It can be used for something great. Like, okay, here's where my dad brain goes off. Imagine if the data center is so powerful that we can give an ambulance with life-saving technology inside of it, and we can give that guy green lights from where he's at to the accident. I thought that should have happened 15 years ago. We already know we can control the grid. So imagine you've got a GPS inside of a fire truck, and this guy is on his way to go save a house that's burning. We're going to give him green lights from A Street to Z Street. That kind of stuff is life changing. That can be so beneficial to the grid. What I don't like is when you hear people say, well, they didn't pull a permit. They've got congressional power. They're just tapping in. To me, that makes it seem almost as if this winning the AI race is a matter of national security. Does that come off the same way to you as well?
I get what you're saying. And speaking of like national security and the pollution and the benefits, it does make me wonder where that fine line is.
Yeah.
Are the AI data centers where they have a measure that we can look at, or something we can measure when we look at it and say it can be really good up to this line, but when it crosses this line, there's pollution, there's health benefits, health negative health impacts, there's effects on nature, there's hits on nature. So where is that line crossed? And can we as a people say, we respect you, we want you, we're going to use you, but there's a line that we got to be respectful of. And then I'll let you finish after I make this point. Then you throw that in the laps of the politicians who have said, oh boy, we're negotiating a big old data center. It's going to bring jobs, it's going to bring industry. We're going to kind of deal with them. We're going to give them no taxes for 10 years. We're going to give them eminent domain, or we're going to give them rights of the water, and everything's be great. And politicians look at it as the business deal, because politicians love money, not just campaign donations. They see money as a way to toot their horn that they brought business, industry, and jobs, but also as a way to fund the government that keeps them being able to, keep their how shall I say, keep their people happy by giving them a piece of the pie. And I'm connecting this together because it goes back to, AI data centers being brought in, and nobody is really looking at the negative benefits. They're looking at more of they're good for society, and government needs them. I know I rambled on a little bit, but can you help me unwind that a little bit?
Well, one of the bigger things that I wanted to bring up to you is my one of my bigger concerns is when you look at the space, right? Look at the sheer size of these data centers. When you start looking at, forget Kevin O'Leary's 40,000 acres, right? When they just approved it in Utah, everybody in Utah didn't want it. They shut it down. They were outside protesting, and before you know it, the Utah government, they passed it. Now they're cleared. They're going to start breaking ground. And he looked at them and he said, look, this is 40,000 acres, but it's not going to be the encompass. That's just the land size of it. The building might be 1,000,000 square feet. And then he said, well, at least in the beginning, it's not going to be that big. So does that mean that we're going to start seeing triple, quadruple the size of the data centers? And this is the one thing I want to go down, recorded in history, to remind people that 25 years ago, 30 years ago, it would take the size of a house, right, filled with computers, that now we could fit on a hard drive this size. Everything as it gets bigger. And Elon Musk has already gone on the record and said that he doesn't think that we're too far off from launching data centers into the sky, drawing power from the sun. And we'll be able to have a better processor, better computer powers, and be able to link right between substations. So what happens if 5 or 10 years from now, we've built these 5,000 to 10,000 massive data centers covering hundreds of thousands of acres and hundreds of millions of square feet of big concrete giant computer systems that can possibly be replaced in the next 10 years. So I don't know that the size of that, what we're building them, without knowing what the environmental impact is. I think you and we are on the same page. Data centers can be good. I want to know, what are they doing to make sure that they're good for human health? That is the most important question. It's not about building robotics. It's not about controlling grid systems. It's not about electrical consumption and just water consumption. It's about human health, because we have a right to live here on the earth more than the robots deserve to go and make a pancake at IHOP.
What's interesting is it looks to me like in the future we may be unwinding these things, maybe even destroying or demolishing what was built today for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And while we could go, yay, that'd be great, we'll reverse it eventually, it'll all be gone, it'll be out in space, we don't have to worry about it. Trees that took hundreds of years to grow, an ecosystem that's taken millions of years to develop, gets destroyed. Will it ever be able to come back?
Mhm.
So, like we said in the beginning, in the middle of this interview so far, it's like, are there positive solutions that people can work on now, being made more aware of what's going on with these data centers, that we can say, okay, now we're getting involved. Now, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, all these data centers have popped up. You know, I know it's not the way it's happened, but I mean, it looks like all of a sudden we're just now seeing them. maybe more people getting involved, like yourself, to say, hey, what can we do to make this good now and continue to be good? Is that what you're doing at Air Water Healing?
So we're more protecting your health. We formulate detox products to help get chemicals, heavy metals, looking at heavy metal cleanses. We're looking at water and air purification, not just from data centers, but just from day-to-day life. Air water healing is all about taking your health back from your home. The Maha movement became a MyHa movement, right? It's make yourself healthy again. You can't lead a horse to the water and make it drink, but you and your family, you can preach, you can practice things daily, right? We partner with the people that are wanting to make the world a better place, because at the end of the day, these AI data centers, I don't think they're going to stop. But what I do think we could do is we could make them more conscious. We can make you and I more conscious. What if we pass into laws where we let people know the sheer energy consumption, right? Hey, this chat GPT is going to cost 3.5 kilowatts of electricity, and it's going to use this much water for you to make this funny little image. You look at companies like Google. Google's already cut their chat GPT and their AI by 50%. They've asked their 100,000 software engineers to do 50% of their research on Google because the massive bills, what it's consuming in electricity. They understand that we have built a monster that nobody understood. When we looked at the hidden power demand, AI is creating an electricity crisis that nobody warned the public about. And again, not trying to disregard the fact that data centers have already consumed hundreds of terawatt hours annually. But we are now being told that AI demand could double, triple, or even quadruple within the next decade. So, do we put enough research into the electrical grid system? Are we going to be putting ourselves in a particular situation where electricity is prioritized to the data center versus regular people? I live in Florida. I already know that when a hurricane hits, the very first person to get the power back is the hospital. That's the grid. That's the grid that gets worked on first, right? That's where all the power lines are going. So if a national disaster, or God forbid, we start building data centers in the middle of Oklahoma and tornadoes run through, am I going to have my brothers and sisters in Christ weeks or months without power because the data centers are a priority? Same thing goes with the water. We're not trying to scare your audience. We're just bringing to attention that there are water concern issues. There's already been problems with water pollution and water pressure. The two P's: pressure, pollution. I turned on my sink in Fayetteville, Georgia for the last 20 years. I was able to wash my hands. I could fill up a water bucket. Now it takes me 4 hours to fill up my tub. And the water that's coming out is murky. It's brown. It's got some soot stuff floating in it. Who do I go and complain to? Who's coming to fix this problem? If it's happening in Fayetteville, is it happening in other places?
Well, in some places you're not going to notice it. Like bigger cities aren't going to notice it necessarily because they have bigger water supplies, more people using it, flushing it out. But like we've been talking about, when you can say, "Hey, we're just making people aware," because the politicians knew that nobody was watching this 20 years ago when they started making the deals for these AI data centers. And it's not just Republicans or Democrats. It's not a party. It was politicians seeing this as an opportunity to bring money to their state and be able to make a deal that makes everybody in a quote win-win situation. And the people weren't aware; it wasn't on their radar. Now more people are waking up to these data centers, and like you and like I keep saying, hey, look, while I am aware of the negativity of certain things, I always try to look at a positive solution, because when you talk negativity, people tend to say, well, I can't do anything to back away. When you talk positive solutions, which is what we're trying to do, get people more involved, now they start talking to their politicians and say, wait, no more data centers until there's proof that they're going to respect our water rights and our health and our nature and our land with certain regulations that show that respect. Is that a way to look at it also?
I think the bigger thing is like I just said to your audience and your listeners, if the goal is reducing environmental infrastructure burden from AI, it starts at home. What can I do to use AI more selectively? What can I myself do to make these data centers run more efficiently, use less water, right? Most tasks don't need these giant models, but if you've got local offices that are using AI or writing or coding, instead of doing a generative AI search, why don't you go back to paper books? Go back to using Google. Find small models, even in your home, that use dramatically less energy in a frontier scale model. So if we're looking at it from an ecological system, right, we've got hundreds of millions of people that are generating pictures on AI every single day. How could we pass the burden on to the people that are specifically, and again, I'm not trying to say that we use an AI tax, right? I'm not trying to be the tax man here, but
Right.
if you and I aren't using AI, right, why should I have to pay more electrical consumption or worry about my water system? I think there's got to be some type of way that we can economically bring attention to people of how can we use AI more responsibly. I think you've got 5 friends that have sent you an AI generated photo of something funny. Here's my house burning. Here's my my pool that turned blood red. Here's my dog with a new haircut. Things that are kind of like funny, but we don't realize how much electrical consumption and water we're putting on the grid. We're putting on the system ourselves. I mentioned to you in the beginning, we're already almost half of the AI data centers. We know about 12,000 of them either broken ground, already completed, or in the works. 5,000 of them are here in the US. So obviously, the US thinks it is imperative to win the AI data center race. They are on track to win this race. We
Yeah,
just have
you let the cat out of the bag a minute ago, though, Mike. You already, your politicians are to love you. They're like, wait, another thing we can tax? That's a great idea. But there's a couple bad things out of that. Not only tax another tax on people, but the data centers will just say, hey, we know you're not taxing us, but you can go tax all these users for
correct.
their use on it, and you can bring in even more money. Give us the deal and we'll show you how. But Mike, you already gave them that idea, man. Come on. I thought you're on our side here.
And again, I am on your side. I'm just letting the
I know, I'm
people
just
know
teasing
that
with you.
it's Hegelian dialectic, right? Problem, reaction, solution. The problem is we've got all this data, we've got all this people, the power grids are going down, the water consumption's going, through the roof. What can we do to figure out how to make this more sustainable, but more importantly, focusing on people's health? Because at the end of the day, these data centers are coming in with some pretty gnarly NDAs, and whether it's an NDA for the workers, whether it's an NDA for how much electricity they're going to use, whether it's an NDA for how many rows of generators we're going to put in, because when these generators are emitting 2.5 parts per million of particulate pollution and releasing nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, VOCs, soot, and not only mentioning the diesel exhaust particles, but a lot of people don't realize that these are increasingly linked to asthma, heart disease, stroke, lung damage, developmental impacts on not only children, but I think that the other issue that we have now is, I don't know if you've got kids or grandkids, but their attention span isn't what it was in the 90s. The cartoons these days are different. And because these people are going in, I don't know how you feel, buddy, but I don't want to go see a doctor that passed his exam by using AI. I'd rather go see a guy that graduated before the computer, a guy that was literally like off of the textbook and can look at cause and effect, somebody that can find the root cause. And that is another thing that's really alarming about this AI race is we don't really know where it's going to stop. And I understand there's going to be a lot of money that's going to be made. There's going to be billionaires, trillionaires, regular guys like you and I that are going to win the S&P 500 race by dumping money into these stocks at the right time. But where is the end game? What if we find out that all of this, people didn't really want it? What if in 5 years? What if in 5 years, or people are like, was it worth it? Did we really need it? Do we want it? What if we just boycott it?
It was interesting, and like you said, boycott it. I like how you say that, but or the word might be a little bit harsher. Instead of boycotting, just say limit the usage. Be respectful. Say, hey, this is a great tool, but until industry figures out a good balance between nature and our health and respect for the environment, you limit your usage until we know that there is a balance on that is going to be where our natural rights aren't going to be abused by our excessive use when we could be making other decisions. I want to bring up the Salt Lake City thing I just heard. I'm sure you're aware of what Salt Lake City is just now faced with, right?
The Kevin O'Leary building a 40,000 square foot compound, well, 40,000 acres, but they're already having issues with their water levels. They're already having water issues. And, one of the most concerning things that Kevin O'Leary said was, he goes, I want people to remember, he goes, this is only 40,000 acres. That's not the sheer size of the data center. He goes, well, at least not in the beginning. Well,
You
what does
make
that
me
mean?
think two things on that. One, there's a bill going through Louisiana right now where they're going to replace the brake tag with a QR sticker. And the Republicans and everybody's cheering, wow, we're going to get rid of the inspection sticker. We're going to not have to go a brake tag station. But all the politicians are doing is replacing a brake tag with a QR sticker that does not require inspection. Now, here's what made me rethink of that. I interviewed the elected official that has that bill, and I said, well, people are concerned that when you scan that QR code, people's personal information are going to show up. He says, yeah, but it's only your name and your address and who you're insured with. So if a cop pulls you over, he'll be able to pull that up. And I said, well, what happens in the future if government doesn't expand what can be pulled up off that QR code? And his statement to me was, I just know that right now, this is what they'll get off that QR code. I can't answer for how government will expand it later. To your point, the data centers are saying, oh no, we're only using this little piece of land. We might have a bigger piece, but who's to say that later, before they start moving into space, they don't double the size, double the water increase, double the electrical use, double the pollution, double the impacts on the environment. And I'll let you comment on that before I finish the Salt Lake City thing. I also heard that going on in Salt Lake City is that the power company has carved out a certain section of some neighborhoods and said that after 2027, we will not be able to provide electricity to you anymore. We're going to reroute that electricity to the data center. Did you hear that yet?
Yes, and that's another concern that we've had. I was just telling Dr. Sherry Tenpenny that I remember when there was water shortages, in Florida, that we would have the guys coming through writing tickets for anybody that were watering their lawns on Tuesdays or Thursdays past 11 o'clock. Same thing in California. You can't wash your car on a Friday through a Saturday, and then it became Thursday to Saturday, and then it was Tuesday to Saturday. So when does it stop? If the electrical company is saying beyond 2 years from now we won't be able to provide electricity unless we get some money passed in or tax the crap out of you and build a new electrical grid or we increase solar. These are the questions that we have to have answered, because if you don't think that they're going to say, hey, we're only going to be able to give you 60% of the water pressure that you're used to living on, when we have to start rerouting for national security for the data centers. And I'm not saying that it's not a good thing to have national security. I'm just saying, is there a better way to do it? Or can we take the trillions of dollars that's flowing into these data centers and say, you guys are responsible to figure out how to cool your computers, which are super cool. Figure out how to cool them without passing the buck onto the American citizen.
Right, exactly.
That's not opposed to it.
Maybe they could anyway, we'll figure out that later. Use some of that excess water. I do want to. I have a few thoughts that I sometimes I like to kind of circle back, and on some questions, because sometimes we start talking about something and then new information comes out as we brainstorm. But I know we're seeing this explosion in data centers now, and they've been around. They've been kind of sneaking up. But why do you think that we are just now noticing it? Why do you think that there is this this next or this new industrial revolution that's happening all of a sudden in bigger numbers now? Is there a reason for it?
Look at our economic debt. We are trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars ahead of where we were, or behind where we were just short 4 years ago. The greatest way to get out of economic debt is to have massive economic growth, right? And the way that we can get through massive debt is by generating trillions and trillions of dollars in our GDP. We are now faced in a situation, whether you want to believe it or not. My boardroom is filled with scientists, epidemiologists, and engineers. And we are now faced here in the United States. If you leave the Mormon community, we have women in this country that are having less and less children than where we were thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago. You look at China, you look at United States, when the birth rates in both countries start to drop, they start to drop, they start to drop. This AI boom is because we have to replace the workers that we are going to lose. The sector will demand it. And it's like we went from 10 years ago, I don't want a robot to replace me. I don't want a robot to come serve me. I've been to the restaurants in Chicago where they're using a conveyor belt and a screen. You just on the computer, brother, you just tap which I want a crab leg dish. I want ramen noodle. And 15 minutes later, it comes out. They don't even have a server anymore. It's just a conveyor belt that brings the food. It stops right there. You grab the plate. When you're done, you put the plate back on and it goes back to the kitchen. 10 years ago, I was like, I don't ever want that. But now I go to restaurants and the guy that's waiting on me has the attention span of a frog. And I'm like, dude, where's my iced tea that I asked for 15 minutes ago? I'm like, now I can't wait for the robot. And I'm like, look how the table has turned in less than 10 years. But where I'm getting at is if we start having women having less and less kids, remember in the Bible, when it said be fruitful and multiply, I always tell people you got to have at least 3 kids to multiply, because if you only have 2 kids, you're replacing mom and dad. You're not adding. You're not adding to. And I don't know about you, dude, but I have so many friends that are like, I don't want kids. It's just it's so expensive. I'm so worried about the state of the world. That's not what it's about. It's about making sure that America continues to grow. And when we start to see a decline in population, someone has to go and pick up those jobs. I think that now with the internet, we're seeing the data centers. Before, it was just ladies across the street that were gossiping. Oh man, they just built this huge building over here. Now everybody's walking around with one of these. We're filming it. We're posting it. We're putting it on TikTok. News coverages are talking about it. Instagram is talking about it. You know, your water supply issue back in the day, only your neighbor knew about it. Now people in England are hearing about the water pollution issues that we're having from Meta's data center that's in Fayetteville, Georgia. It's now just getting more attention. It's not that there wasn't always this ramp up and scale up. It's just now we're starting to recognize the vast expansion that it is.
You know, you brought up the national debt and GDP and how data centers are almost needed to correct that problem. But there's an even bigger problem than that, Mike. And I'm gonna have to just kind of crush your optimism on that for a second. The problem is politicians are not frugal. They're not efficient. They're wasteful. They will not see. They'll go, wow, we're bringing all this extra money. That's more money to spend, and they will find some government program to create. They'll find some, somebody over in some third world country to give the money to. They'll figure out some healthcare company in Minnesota run by immigrants. Ooh, I'm sorry, that's it. That was a, they'll find some way to launder the money. I like that.
We're gonna beep that. We're gonna beep that out.
Yeah, right. So they'll find some way to waste it instead of using it to pay down the national debt. And that's the problem. More money doesn't mean they get more frugal, and it means that they get more wasteful. And that's just my opinion. Do I have a thumbs up for more? Or do you have a few more minutes?
Yeah, let's keep going, man. Let's dive. We can dive a couple more minutes deeper into this. And also, just so your audience knows, I'm actually on vacation right now. So what you're actually seeing is the AI version of myself. So There's actually there's a projection screen right above me. What you're seeing right now is all green screen. I'm using my autonomous information that I uploaded into the cloud to be able to do this interview with you. So if people are watching me live stream right now from Disney World with my kids, just know that. See, but that's the part of AI that
Disney World. Do you have hair, or is this just your AI version?
Yeah, I didn't want to. I told you I asked ChatGPT how I could minimize my impact, and they said that giving me a head of hair would cost an extra 8.5 gallons per minute of live streaming. So I'm trying to conserve water for the data alley that's up in Northern Virginia. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. But no, in all seriousness, AI can be a great thing if it's done right.
Do you have any data? Do you have any other data that people would be able to latch on to or be able to use as a tool for some of the positive solutions, getting more involved, anything like that? Any more data that they can know or would like to know?
Well, yeah, you just got to look at what they promised it wasn't going to replace, right? So we were always worried about AI replacing, like people thought for thousands of hours of research, they're like, oh man, engineers are going to be safe, coders are going to be safe. What's the first thing that AI replaced? Coding. Right. Engineers. Like it's like the easiest thing. You could literally go to ChatGPT and you could go to Gronk AI and go to Canva and you could say, design me a website. So yes, it can be used. It can be used as a tool if you're using it for the groundwork. If you still go do most of the work yourself, figure out how to still go to like old school companies like Wix and Google and GoDaddy, build most of the website. Why don't you use a little bit of human ingenuity? Let ChatGPT just do the prompts, but you go do some of the work yourself. Don't let everything be fully automated. I can tell you right now, I have a very successful company. When I go and ask ChatGPT to write an email for me, I don't care how many times I've done it in the past. I now carve out 10, 15 minutes. I write out a beautiful email myself. I work on my own Substack, and I get way better responses from the human emotion that is written and typed out, because people don't want AI related content. They still like that human emotion, sharing a personal story. Type out that email, figure out how you can contribute to society. Use AI less until it becomes more sustainable, until it becomes more environmentally friendly.
No matter how good AI is, you can always tell when there's a human or a personal touch in there. Do I have a couple more minutes for a couple more questions?
Yeah, please.
So now we're hearing about businesses and that are offering communities free cameras. Oh, we're going to put these cameras up in there and you connect into them. You can watch the streets. Your streets will be safer. There's a lot of different communities that are buying into these different types of camera systems that they're getting for free. But are those things getting hooked up to these AI data centers? And are we under more surveillance as a result of these data centers? Is there something spooky, and quote, nothing to worry about here? There's nothing to see here. Move along. Or, is there really something that we should know? Are we going to be under more surveillance with these data centers? Again, is there something spooky, or should we not be concerned?
I think we always have to be concerned, and of course, big government will be the one to come out and be like, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, you've got nothing to worry about. Why don't you care about it? Look at the backlash from the super, can't say that big game in the NFL or they'll send you a cease and assist. But when people were watching the Super, there had that Ring doorbell where they like launched this new program about being able to find your pet. So they were trying to like launch the idea of, you can access your neighbor's camera and look for a dog in a neighborhood. That's kind of like the same thing, because what happens is they'll promote it as safety, right? Well, we can stop child sex trafficking if there's a camera on every corner everywhere in the United States. If everybody has a camera in their house, it creates this digital imprint. My biggest concern is, where does it stop? Right. We already have routers that can pick up heat signatures within inside of our houses. Comcast knows where your dog is when you're not in the house. That's how powerful these routers are. Same thing you were talking about when you asked that politician about the QR code on the back. Well, for right now, I can only say that it's just going to have your address, whether you've got insurance or not, and we're going to come in. What happens when the bad guy gets access to that QR code and can get more data? and then comes to your house and grabs your mail. Now he's got your social security, he's got your date of birth. We have to be very careful with how much we allow the big government, because whether or not we believe it, big tech can be good, can also be bad. We have to limit the exposure, right? Like we have so much information that we just give out freely already. Like people are so worried about like sharing things on information, but yet you could figure out their entire life story on their Facebook page. I know when you're on vacation. I know where you go. I know the favorite restaurant. I know every day that you're having lunch at this place. We give away so much information. And you know, how secure are these data centers? That's another question you and I didn't even really talk about, is how much information are they keeping? How much information are they selling?
That's right. I will wrap up on one more thought and one last question for you. The thought is you brought up, about the data, about cameras in our homes and on our homes, looking out of our homes. And, there's now a government regulation that after 2027, that car companies are going to be required to put cameras in the cars with sensors, the cameras facing the driver with sensors. So if the camera deems you unable to drive, impaired with alcohol or whatever, the car will be disabled. And they're doing that in the name of getting rid of drunk driving, and everybody cheers and go, "Yay, this will be safe." But the problem is, like you said, where does it stop? If we start putting, is the government one day going to say you have to have a camera in your home so we can help detect fires and help detect whatever, in emergency? And what happens, when they say, hey, you use too much water to wash your hands, you get a tax, for that. It's not, government is going to look for every way it can to control us. Your thoughts on that? And then I'll ask you one final question, and then we're going to have to wrap up.
I do not like the cameras in cars. As much as I don't, I would rather them say, because at the end of the day, I think driving drunk is one of the worst things you can do. It's irresponsible, because I have friends that were killed by drunk drivers. I have friends who have lost children in drunk driving accidents when they were on the receiving end. If that's the case, then maybe they make all cars to where you've got to use a breathalyzer. Is it an overreach? Yes, but I'd rather have that than a camera, because the camera, like you said, how does it know whether you're a little sleepy? How does it know whether you're drunk? What if you're just a little drowsy? What if you just woke up, you're running your kids to school, but you're still able to function, properly, but then they're going to disable your car. The last thing I want to do is be on the internet scrolling past videos, and all of a sudden, some video from 80 years ago with some dictators giving a speech, and they're like, "Oh, nope, you're anti-Semitic." No, I was just doing research. They're
right,
like,
yeah, right, exactly.
now we're taxing you. You're misinformation. We're all going to be on the dirty dozen list pretty soon.
Mike, last question. Where do you think we're losing freedom the fastest in America?
Oh man, that's a good one. I think we're losing our right to think. I think
That's
just our thought process. I think that we're losing our freedom of education. I'm so scared for the children. I really am, man. I've seen some pretty crazy ideologies that are being passed on to the young youth, and I could tell you right now, if I had to change one direction that I would do, I would ask parents to stop sending their kids to school, homeschool them, teach them biblical principles, and teach them a trade. Because I can tell you right now, brother, as a guy who grew up before I got into podcasting, there ain't no robot in the world that's ever going to replace an electrician or a plumber. That is some arts, and that's some crafts that you need. I promise you right now. I think 10 years from now, electricians are going to be making more money than some doctors.
I agree with you. How can people find you?
Airwaterhealing.com. You could find my socials with the tag at airwaterhealing. We manufacture the best air purifiers, best water purification systems. And if you guys are ever looking for another show sponsor, if you want to have us roll in there at the bottom, we would love to work with you, man, because if you detox the body, you will change your life.
Maha, Mike Dillon, thank you so much. Hang in there 1 second while I ask the guests to please share the show, especially with people who want to be more informed about the AI data centers. Do it in a positive way. Don't be doomsday and doom and gloom, because you're going to turn more people off. Do it in a positive way, so that way we can make more people aware how they can take control of not only their privacy, but their health. And please visit Maha Mike at airwaterhealing.com. Thank you so much. Share the show, and I'll see you soon.
Awesome.